Hey everybody, and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards from the board game Dominion. Today we're looking at Black Market. This is a 3-cost action promotional card, and it has a lot of text written on it, a huge amount actually. I'm just not going to read through it all because I'm going to be going over what the card does anyway. Now, what do I mean by promotional card? This card is not a part of any expansion. If you want to buy a physical copy, you actually have to buy it separately on its own via the Board Game Geek store. Board Game Geek is a website, sort of like a board game database and accompanying community. You will find pretty much every board game on there, and like forums along with it, and pictures and ratings and so on and so forth. This card has a lot of text and accompanying rules. It creates a large number of unusual interactions. It really screws with the game rules quite a bit. Games can get very, very complicated with Black Market. So far, so Possession, right? However, unlike Possession, this card is actually a lot of fun, and it's definitely worth spending the time thinking about this card and like getting good at it. Unlike Possession, where your life will be hell. So it's great. This is one of my favourite cards, actually. It's really, really fun to play with. So at a glance, what's happening with this card? So Black Market constructs an entirely separate pile of individual cards called the Black Market deck. They are all unique copies. There are no duplicates in it. And every time you play Black Market, you sort of get the chance to buy one of the cards in the Black Market in the middle of your turn. So you are presented a choice of 3 cards that are pulled off the top of the Black Market deck. So you don't really know what you're going to be looking at. And you can buy one of those cards, or none of them, obviously providing you have the money for it, every time you play the Black Market. It is a different set every time you play it, by the way. You can't rely on getting any sort of particular card. Most of the time you simply have no idea what's going to show up and what's going to be available for you. And because there's no duplicates, once you've seen a card, who knows what else you're going to get, right? Like, they're all different, so it's huge variety that comes from it. So this card has a lot of recommendations in its rules on how you set up this Black Market deck, but it also offers quite a lot of freedom. They are sort of vague, and so, especially when you're playing with the physical version, you can sort of do whatever you want to set it up. Now, the current digital implementation of Dominion that is used by the competitive community, which is a website, www.dominion.games, this also changes some other minor aspects of the card and how it works for a smoother and less confusing gameplay experience. So I'll be covering playing with this card physically and also on the website. It would be wrong to not cover how the website does it. Just because for most people that's actually how they will ever play with this card, because they just never see it in real life because it's hard to get. So what is this Black Market deck? It's what's called a non-supply pile. This means that you can't buy or gain from it from normal methods. Any card that can gain cards, you're just not allowed to pull from the Black Market deck. So it can only really be interacted with via the card Black Market itself. If the pile empties, it doesn't count towards your 3-pile ending condition. And all of the cards in the Black Market, they are unique, and they're also not otherwise present in the kingdom. So you will always see stuff that's not otherwise available for you there. When you construct the Black Market before the game begins, you've got the freedom to sort of construct it however you like, but all of the cards must be unique. They must not be otherwise present in the kingdom. You are recommended to have at least 15 cards in there. So if you only owned like the base game, you would have 9 cards from the base game in the Black Market, and then like the rest of the base cards would probably make up the Black Market, right? Now, you are allowed to look at the contents of the deck before the game begins, but once gameplay has begun, it is a face-down shuffled deck. So it's going to be unviable to look through it because you would see what order the cards are in. So you only get to know what's available in the Black Market, and then you just sort of have to remember. Now, when you're playing with a physical copy, Setting up a black market deck could be very time consuming if you're trying to set up a specific one. So what people tend to do is that they just use the randomizer cards that they have. So all of the randomizer cards that they've not actually, they've taken out the ones that make up the rest of the kingdom normally. Or they might grab one of their expansion boxes that they haven't used in this game, and they'll just grab all the randomizer cards from it and say, this is the Renaissance black market deck. It's every card from Renaissance in it. Now, because randomizer cards have a different coloured back, what would normally happen is that you would look at the cards for the randomizer ones when you're doing the black market stuff, but then when you buy one, you put it aside and you take an actual copy with the proper card back from the box or something, and then you would play with that one card instead, right? Because you don't want to be playing with the randomizer because of the darker blue coloured back that it has. You'll be able to see when you're getting your black market cards. Now, some cards sometimes come with additional setup rules. So, for example, the potion cost cards from the Alchemy expansion, when one of them is present, you have to add potion to the kingdom. Baker from Guilds makes everyone start with a coffer token. And cards from Nocturne, some of them will replace your starting cards with heirlooms. If you've got any card that has additional setup instructions in the black market deck, you still need to follow their setup rules. So what this means is that kingdoms can get very, very busy. You can have a whole load of non-supply piles and starting bonuses. Your decks are very wildly different. Like, there could be huge amounts of things on the table based on what comes up with black market. Now, Dominion.Games makes some changes to this and apply some restrictions on how they set up the black market deck. So it always uses a deck of 60 cards, unless you physically don't have access to enough cards for it to do that, I suppose. It will not let you see the contents of the deck before the game begins, so players are not just hunting through the deck or looking back in the log to see what cards are available and like just spending all this time browsing through the cards. It also very specifically does not add any cards to the black market that would cause different setup rules based on what's already in the kingdom. So if one of your 10 normal kingdom cards was a potion cost card, potion will be in, and then potion cost cards will be allowed to show up in the black market deck. But if there isn't potion normally in the kingdom, then you won't find any potion cards ever in the black market deck. It will just block them from showing up. That's the same with heirlooms. The cards that provide heirlooms and replace your starting coppers, they will never show up in the black market deck in Dominion.Games. So this is just to make the game way less confusing. You don't suddenly just have all of this stuff, or give you some idea of what's in the black market as well, because you're not allowed to look at it. You get no hints, because you just won't see these cards that cause wacky starting conditions. Now, when you play black market from your hand, you get 2 coins. Then you look at the top 3 cards of the black market deck. You can then play any number of treasures from your hand, pretty much as if it were a buy phase, right? Just play your treasures. Then you can spend any money that you've made up to that point that you have. So any action cards you played earlier, like festivals, they will count as well. And you get to buy one of the 3 cards if you want to, but that is optional. Now, this doesn't actually cost you a buy, right? It's not your buy phase, so you're not spending buys by doing this. But it also means that you're not going to gain a spare buy for your buy phase if you don't buy anything now. So it's like sort of a temporary ability to purchase something that only exists, like exclusive to that play of black market, right? You don't get anything better out of it if you don't buy anything. Any cards that you did not buy will get put at the bottom of the deck, and you as the player gets to choose the order that they go in the bottom. Now, because it's not your buy phase when you're trying to buy cards in the black market, you can't do things that normally you can do in the buy phase. So you can't pay off debt, for example. However, because it still technically counts as a buy, debt will actually block you from buying from the black market. So if you are in debt, all of your black markets will fail to work until you reach your buy phase, basically. So you can't actually accidentally lock yourself out of being able to purchase from the black market. So watch out for debt. Now, Dominion.games, again, make some changes in this regard. So players do not spend time putting cards back in a certain order. And the reason for that is because if players get all the way through the 60-card deck to the bottom, the deck gets shuffled before you run through it another time. So this speeds up the game so that players aren't just making this constant choice of what order to put cards back in. It also prevents tracking problems as well. Like if you wanted to play Dominion at high level, trying to remember the order of like 50 plus cards were put onto this deck when it comes round again. Like, just, it's hell, right? Or you'd have to sit there with a pen and paper and write it down all the time, like, or spend time looking through the log, right? Really would grind the game to a halt and just add all of this mental tax. So I just didn't do it. They physically change what the card tells you to do. Like, they actually just ignore the card text in this case. This is like the only card where they physically have made a change where it actually, the card no longer does what it says it does on it. So, which is interesting, but they've done it for reasons, and it's a promo card, so they were allowed to get away with it. I believe they asked Donald X, the designer, and he agreed and said it was okay. Now, it is worth noting that when you buy a card from the black market deck, that card doesn't have an accompanying supply pile. The black market deck does not count as its normal pile, and this has implications for some cards. Some cards can be massively improved by this, and some can be completely ruined. So, for example, the Traveller cards from Adventures, they have the word exchange on it, and exchange means that you put the card back in its supply pile to gain some other card. But because there is no supply pile, the exchange fails. You literally cannot upgrade Peasant and Page to their future versions. Now, interestingly, because setup rules require you to put out the upgrades for Peasant and Page, like you would have them on the table, but you wouldn't be able to use them. So they're a bit weird in that regard, right? They can't be upgraded. They suck compared to how they normally are. Meanwhile, cards like Experiment, this one is a laboratory that returns itself to the supply. However, the bonus, the +2 cards and +1 action, is not dependent on returning to the supply working. So this is just a cheap laboratory for 3. Sometimes you get cards that add tokens to their pile. So Wild Hunt is an example, and Farmer's Market is another one from Empires. When you play them, they might add tokens to a pile. However, that pile doesn't exist, so they don't actually accumulate tokens. So they get a lot worse. And the really big one with Black Market, Way of the Horse, basically turns every Black Market card into Experiment, into a laboratory. You can't return the card to its pile. So as long as you play the Black Market cards, the ones you got from the Black Market, with Way of the Horse, they're just laboratories. So you can buy Pearl Divers, really cheap 2-cost cards, and now they're incredibly cheap laboratories. And there are more examples, like these are just some examples. So for the purposes of discussing black market strategy-wise, we've sort of gone through all of the rules and how it works now. I'm going to be considering mainly that you don't know what's in the black market deck and you don't know what's coming up. So this will be like, for example, your first run-through of the black market deck on the Dominion.games client. Well, that's the case. You have no idea what's going to be in there. Now, if you do know what's in it, so, for example, you're playing a physical copy and it's like all of the base game cards are your black market deck, you do have some implications to that. Like, you kind of know that certain cards are going to be there, like there's going to be a certain number of villages. Like, if you see someone pull a festival out, you know that there's still a normal village and, like, throne room in there and so on. In practice, however, whether or not you know what cards are in the black market deck doesn't really change whether or not you actually go for black market, right? And that's because of, well, we're going to go through it, but, the reasons why you're going to be going for black market, like, they sort of don't change depending on what's in the deck as such. So we would just sort of assume that you have no idea what's going to be in the black market deck. So black market can get you basically any type of card, probably. Villages, draw, trashing, extra buys, it's all possible. Like, you could get anything at all from the black market deck. And so the first question you're probably going to ask yourself is, okay, can I fill a niche that is otherwise missing from the kingdom? So, what sort of cards are you looking for? It's like, well, I'm missing this certain thing, so what if I hunt through the black market deck for cards that do that? Bear in mind that some types of cards are going to be more effective coming from the black market than others. There's also no guarantee that you will actually find a particular type of card. It's entirely possible that there's no trashing at all in the black market deck, for example. Or if there is such a card, that you will find it very quickly, right? It could all be at the bottom of the black market deck if it is there. You just have no idea. So let's look at some of these common niches and let's see if they're any good for black market. So trashing. If your kingdom doesn't have any trashing, would you buy black market to try and get thin? Well, the truth is that it could be very slow to find one, and it's not necessarily the case that the trashing is actually going to be any good. If it takes you like 2 extra shuffles to finally find like a trash card and buy it, you'd better hope it's a strong and fast trasher like Chapel for you to really get your deck thin. Because if you're trashing 1 card at a time and you didn't buy it until like turn 8 or something, like how thin are you really going to be getting? Like, it's going to take a long time to get your deck thin. So slow trash cards normally have the problem. You want to get them straight away because they very slowly thin your deck. Stuff like Trading Post is actually only thinning like 1 card at a time. And, well, if you spend even longer to buy it, then that's really bad, right? It's going to take a very long time. And, of course, you only get 1 copy of it as well. You couldn't possibly double up on it. If it's something like Forager, get multiple copies. Like, you can't do that here. So, so trashing is risky. If you're missing trash cards, don't count on black market for actually filling that up. You should consider that you are not going to be able to trash and try and build as though you can't. And then if you do get something, then hey, fantastic, right? If you get one that works out. Now, what about villages? Well, black market is terminal, and this makes it very awkward if you want to use it to try and add more villages to your deck. So the thing is that if you're looking for villages, you're probably going to want to be buying like a couple of black markets to increase the odds of finding them and buying them because you might be so desperate for them. But then the problem is that those markets are going to be spent playing your black markets, right? So those villages are going to be spent playing your black markets. So that means that you won't necessarily have very many villages to play all of those incredible terminal cards that you're going to be finding in the black market deck. The truth is that black market is very heavy on villages. This is something that you're going to need in amounts that you can only find in a fully stocked supply pile. So black market is probably not going to work out if you don't have any villages. This is probably the core basic effect that you most need to already be present in the kingdom if you're going to use black market, right? You really need villages for this. This is going to get you a lot of terminals, black market. What about draw cards? Well, there's lots of draw cards in Dominion. A lot of them follow similar patterns, like Smithy with a bonus, or Laboratory, but the truth is that most of them are terminal to some capacity. If it is already possible in the kingdom to start trashing well early, you probably don't even need that many draw cards, right? You certainly aren't going to need as many as you're going to want, like villages. So black market is absolutely fine as a way to try and get hold of draw. I think you're pretty likely that you're going to find some. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when you look at what expansions are made up of, what kind of cards, you will find that draw, villages, like they tend to come in certain proportions all the time. Like a certain percentage of every set, every expansion is going to be villages, and so on. And that is to make sure that when you just go full random, you always have a certain chance that you're probably going to have a village pile or two or draw pile or two. So there's a lot of draw cards out there in Dominion. At worst, even if you don't get very many draw cards, you might find good cantrips or cards that work pretty well in a deck that doesn't draw very well. So, it's okay to if you need a bit of draw from black market, you might find some. And what about buys and gains? Well, black market is a kind of like a source of buy. You can't use it to get like double province, but you can use it to add extra engine components to your deck. It still speeds up your ability to build your deck in the same way as having a card with plus buy does. So if you imagine a card plus 2 coins and plus buy, like the old removed card Woodcutter, black market, early game, it can sort of work like that in a way. In addition to that, you're pretty likely to find at least one additional source of buy or some other card that gains cards. Like there's a lot of them around. And how much extra plus buy do you really need? Like it could be that you only actually need one other source of plus buy. So like buying a single pawn will absolutely do the trick to like help you double profits. And black market is already helping you like spend any excess money that you have on your turn towards nice things. So black market's perfectly fine. If there's no other buy in the kingdom, you will probably get some from the black market. So yeah, that's a niche that it fills very well. But the primary use of black market is engine payload. You mainly buy black market because you want to find other payload cards with it. So what do we mean by payload? Payload is essentially the catch-all term for stuff that you want to do once you've got your deck under control and you're drawing your deck. So the classic example that I always use is like Bridge as like the ultimate payload card, but black market is a very good one as well. Sometimes you're thinning your deck, you're trashing it down, you're buying the villages, the smithies, the draw cards, and it's all for one main purpose. That is to get a bunch of black markets and just play them. You're probably getting... Maybe you don't even get more than 2 black markets, right? Maybe that's the most you ever go for. But really, black market is hunting for other forms of payload, right? So you're looking for your goons, you're looking for your bridges, you're looking for strong attacks, and so on and so forth. Once you've got your solid functioning engine, which you've built with the cards that are already in the kingdom, black market just gives you endless ways to keep on improving the output of your engine, and it does so in a way that doesn't risk hitting a 3-pile ending. So the black market deck does not count towards 3-pile ending. It is not a supply pile. You're just pulling cards over and over again from that. Like, when's the game going to come to an end? It isn't. You can just keep on building and keep on building, especially if you've got a really hefty black market deck like the one from Dominion.Games, which is 60 cards. Right, there's a lot of cards added to the kingdom, 30 each for each player. Whew, that's a lot. Black market, you just keep on building for a long time. And the best bit is you get to build a deck that then suddenly does all sorts of things. There are so many different types of powerful effects in Dominion, and you just pull all kinds of stuff from there. Who knows where your deck's going to go, but it's probably going to do something really, really good. So you might crush your opponent under a large variety of attacks, right? You might ramp up the output of your deck very, very quickly. Like, lots of stuff that you can do once you've got the engine going with black market. Okay, so when do you gain black market? Well, how early you're going to get one is going to depend pretty much on how quickly you think you get to build the engine without it, right? You sort of don't want to be using black market just as a terminal silver, because that kind of stinks, right? But at the same time, you don't really get to use its extra gaining unless you actually pick something up from the black market. So it's not helping you like hit 6 to buy 2 villages from the village pile because you only got 1 buy, right? That sort of thing. If it's the only way to gain more than 1 card per turn, then you probably open with it, and that is because you want to start buying engine components at a faster rate, even if they're not very good ones, even if it is just native village or something. In the black market deck, that's fine. You just want to get more than 1 engine component per turn. So you use black market as sort of the gainer of random cards in that case. If you can already get up to speed pretty fast with what else is already in the other 9 regular kingdom piles, then early game it's sort of acting like a bit of an awkward woodcutter, except you might not actually be able to buy something that you want at the time when you play it, right? You play it early game, and what does it show up? Like King's Court that you can't afford, it shows up something that, stuff you just don't need right there and then it could easily do. And it's like, well, okay, it's not really doing much for you then. It could be pretty bad. So if you've got a strong engine without black market, you want to treat black market like the payload of that engine, and you want to time when you get it according to what you might normally do. Right, so like if you had a strong engine, when would you add a bridge to it? Well, you might not open bridge, right? You might open trashing, you might start getting villages and draw and a bit of money, and then you start like throwing the bridges in, for example. Well, black market kind of the same in that regard, right? It's your payload, if at all possible. Now, at first glance, if you're new to black market, it might feel like that black market is going to be a mad grab for special cards, and there's a big rush to get it and play as many as you can, so you get first dibs on those really cool cards in the black market. But this isn't really true. This is not quite how you play with the card. Truth is, you don't know what's going to show up. You don't know when it's going to show up. And the reality is you are not necessarily any less likely to find the ideal cards that you want if you just wait a little bit. Right, because sure, maybe the very first play of black market comes up with this incredible card that wins the game, right? And if your opponent does that first, hey, they get first shot at it. But it also could have only shown up on the fifth play, and maybe the fifth play of black market in the game was your first play, right? You just don't know. It's random in that regard. So, and the truth is that if you get black market early, you might not even be able to afford the card you want. Maybe you really want something like Bank or Expand or, King's Court or whatever, and you just flip open early and just, I can't afford that. And so off it goes to the bottom of the deck, or to be, you don't see it until the second run through the black market deck, and what value was that, buying the black market and doing it early? In reality, you should always focus on getting your deck under control first. Sometimes black market will be what helps you get your deck under control if you need the extra gains for engine components, so then you get it. But otherwise, it's no rush, right? It's a payload card. Add it when you need the payload. So what are you looking for in the black market deck? Well, you'll be surprised at how many Dominion cards can be really, really strong, even if you only have one copy. Cards tend to be better in the presence of other cards, and with black market, you throw a lot of different type of cards into your deck. Some cards can let you ramp up the output of your deck very quickly. They could be a devastating attack against simpler strategies and give you alternate ways of scoring so you don't need to join in the province rush, which buys you some more time. Now what we're going to be doing is we are going to be going through long lists of cards. These are not comprehensive lists, but they're going to give you some examples of the sorts of things in black market and why hopefully you'll start to recognise when you're looking at these cards how black market can just completely change the game and be very, very strong in your deck if you pull stuff like this. So let's say you want to ramp up the output of your deck, get an engine going that really does a lot. So the classic example is Outpost. If Outpost is in the black market deck, you are the only player who's going to be using this, and so you get an extra turn compared to your opponents, right? You just get twice as many turns now as them. Right, they can't do it themselves. They don't have Outpost. So now doing double the output, right? That's crazy. And along similar lines, Fortune. Now this is the bottom pile of a split pile, and so I don't know how you will be deciding. Some people might say, okay, only the top card of the split pile you get to use, in which case you'll never see Fortune. But if you do, doubling your money, right? And you only ever need one copy of this card anyway. So just wild find in the black market, right? That can be exceptional. And there's none of these gladiators getting in the way of buying it. Cards like King's Court. Now, it's worth calling out Throne Room type cards specifically with black market, because you only ever get one copy of all the cards that you find. Something that lets you play those cards more than once can be really good. And King's Court in particular, obviously King's Court's even better if you have multiples of it, but even just one, you can play one of those cards that you found 3 times, and that can be very, very good value. Tournament is a particular shout out as well. Normally people are fighting over being the first one to gain the prizes, and if you have just the only tournament, then you can pick the prizes that you want at your leisure, right? You can get all of them entirely uncontested, and that's pretty crazy, right? A deck that has every prize does a lot, right? It draws really well, it's attacking people with junking and discard attacks, it's got cost reduction with extra buy, it does so much. Something you can also do is you can get these really, really strong attacks that absolutely wallop other strategies. So if someone's trying to just go for a treasure strategy where they just pick off the provinces one at a time, highly likely that you'll find something in the black market that just shuts them down completely with nasty attacks. So Legionary would shut down very specifically that kind of attack. A really brutal discard attack that means that they're never single provincing ever again, right? Knights are scary. If you've ever played with knights, you will know that if you end up in a situation, particularly in two-player, where only one person has any knights left, they will just smash your deck into nothing. And with Black Market, if a knight shows up, there is only one knight, right? It's the only one. And Mountebank is just like the double junker, just incredible. Like, just throw tons and tons of junk into your opponent's deck. So there are more examples, but these again are just a smattering of the sorts of things that you can see might come up. Alternate ways of scoring are really good, so you can just build for longer. So the classic is Goons. Now, of course, Goons gets better when you have multiple copies, but remember, Goons gives you points when you buy cards, and technically you are buying cards from the black market. So you can play a Goons first, you now get points every time you buy from the black market. I mean, you only get 1 point, mind you, but that's pretty good, right? The classic coin token card, though, really good for black market, is Bishop. This can get you a lot of coin tokens, and if you are the only player who can Bishop, like maybe you find a gold gainer in the black market as well, and suddenly every turn you're catching up really quickly, right? You are getting a lot of points, and your opponent has no chance of building a similar deck because it's the only Bishop. There's Museum and Fairgrounds. These tend to be better if they are the other. Well, with Museum, it has to be something present in the kingdom, but Fairgrounds is obviously a lot better if it's not just one copy, but it's lots, but it gives you more points for the different number of unique cards that you have, or differently named cards, and same with Museum as well. So just buying more cards in the black market, like Goons, it just earns you points when these are around. And another example is Keep, a landmark from Empires. This gives you 5 points for every differently named treasure that you have more copies of than every other player, and so any treasure in the black market deck is suddenly worth 5 points, right? They're all like almost provinces, and they can be really cheap. You could have like Coin of the Realm or Fool's Gold that cost 2, and is giving you 5 points if you buy it, right? Just huge points that you can be getting from black market, and you just build and build and build, and you're getting these useful cards, and you're getting loads of points. Cards that really care about variety do very, very well with black market. So some examples: Menagerie draws incredibly well, gives you +3 cards non-terminally if every card in your hand is different, which is highly likely if you have a lot of black market cards. Horn of Plenty gains for differently named cards that you have, and it's really, really easy to trigger Horn of Plenty when you're using black market. If you have Magic Lamp, again, very, very easy to trigger. You just need to have 6 cards at least that you have exactly 1 copy of in play, and it sort of happens by accident when you're playing with black market. One that is probably underrated is actually really good. I don't know if people think about it that much. Devil's Workshop. This is really, really good at gaining imps, and imps are like laboratories where they have to, the next card you play has to be something you've not played yet in turn. It's not already in play. So really, really easy to safely play imps when you have black market. Just start buying non-terminals from the black market, and now Devil's Workshop will gain you tons of imps, and they're all like labs, and so drawing becomes really, really easy with black market, thanks to Devil's Workshop. Now, some cards change a lot based on whether you or your opponent has a deck filled with uniques. Some can get really good, and some can get awful. And similarly, some cards really benefit from being the only copy. So an example of the latter is Flag Bearer and the other cards that use artifacts from Renaissance. When you buy Flag Bearer, you take the flag, and no one can take it from you. Unless you trash it and they have something like Lurker available to them, like you now just gain you just draw an extra card between every turn, right? 6 card hands for the rest of the game, just on the cheap for just buying it out of the black market. A Jester attack is going to be no good against black market players because you can't gain any of copies of the cards that you're flipping over because there's no pile to gain them from, right? They're just filled with non-supply pile cards. But on those lines, Kiln gets really bad. If you play a black market card after Kiln, you don't get a copy, of course. 2 cards that are really worth shouting out in black market. These cards are normally pretty bad, but they get really, really strong with black market and can actually shut down black market decks. Gatekeeper and Cardinal from Menagerie. So these cards exile, they're exiling attacks, And that's really important with black market, because if a card goes into the exile, you can't get it out again because you can't gain a copy of it. So particularly Gatekeeper, that exiles cards that you don't have in exile when you gain them. If you can play a Gatekeeper every turn, your opponent can no longer use the black market, because if they try to gain a card from the black market deck, it just gets exiled and they lose it forever and they can't access it. So you can absolutely shut down black market with Gatekeeper. Sometimes you don't, because you don't really want Gatekeeper, like it's still a bad card, but you can. If an opponent is going for black market, and again you can get your deck under control, you can just shut it out with Gatekeeper. Cardinal as well is like a cheaper knight, basically. Like they just start losing all of their black market cards. Also worth shouting out Wolf Den. Black market is absolutely non-viable if Wolf Den is out, because you just lose too many points. Every card you buy from the black market loses you 3 points. Well, you're never going to buy from the black market in that case. Another interesting feature of black market, because you get a chance to play the treasures from your hand when you play black market, this is a great way to empty treasures out of your hand during your action phase, and some cards really care about that. So draw to X cards like Watchtower and Library, you can draw through treasures with them. You know, normally treasures are bad and you're looking for cards like Festival with draw to X, but you can just keep using normal treasures and play them and then draw your hand back up, the draw to X. Tactician needs a particular shout out. Normally you can't play treasures at all with Tactician. If Tactician is one of the regular Kingdom cards, you can play double Tactician whilst also using money or treasure cards to get all your money, something that you normally can't do. Now, if Tactician is the only, there's only one because you found it in the black market, well, you can still play it safely, right? It's not as good, but you still have the opportunity to spend a turn, hopefully, where you get to play your treasures and still play the Tactician as well. And some treasures do really well in your action phase. So Quarry is an example. It makes all action cards cost 2 less, so you can start workshopping 6 cost cards if you manage to play a Quarry first, right? So, yeah, you just get these... there's a bunch of special interactions that you should take note of. These are just some examples. But basically anything that likes you to have small hand sizes, like Diplomat or so on, can work very well. Now, it might seem, looking at all of this, like Black Market is going to be a very random card. You don't know what you're going to get from it. You could be getting anything at all. But in practice, Black Market actually has the highest, what we call skill multiplier, out of all of the cards in Dominion. So what do we mean by that? So the skill multiplier is basically a number assigned to every card that says, if this card is present in the kingdom, is the higher rated player more likely to win? So what someone did was they looked at a load of games with various players, and they looked at what cards were in the kingdom and basically who won, the higher rated player or the lower rated player, and they looked at what cards were in the kingdom and, crunched all loads of stats, and out of it come a number, and Black Market was at the top. It says that if Black Market is present in the kingdom, the higher rated player is more likely to win than if any other card were present in the kingdom. And so there's a couple of reasons for this. So Black Market benefits from being familiar with every card in Dominion, and you just got to play Dominion a lot to get to that level. So of course, higher rated players, of course, more likely to have played Dominion a lot or studied it or thought about it. And also the ability to just see card interactions, right? With Black Market, you get a lot of different cards in your deck. And so when you're looking at the cards that are available for Black Market, just seeing that card there works really well with this one other card that I've got. You just have to be really good at the game to see these things and put in a lot of time and effort. And so Black Market really rewards that as well. Also, it heavily promotes engines, and better players tend to be better at building engines. So, in conclusion, Black Market is one of the better engine payloads in the game. It's probably not the best, but it's high up there. It's very, very good. engine payload. It lets you build, just build more. You just keep building. You get a very, very strong deck. It really lets you ramp up quite a lot. However, there needs to be an engine already present in order for that to be viable. Doesn't mean you only buy black market when there's a strong engine, but the stronger the engine is, the better black market being present as it's going to be. It works best when you have lots of village support because there are a lot of juicy terminals that you're likely going to want to pull out of the black market deck, and it gets very less effective if you can only justify pulling like non-terminal cards from the black market or cantrips and so on, right? You really want to be able to pick the best stuff, but that means you need a deck that's able to play a lot of the best stuff. Huge number of synergies and combos open up with access to so many cards, even when you're limited to only one copy of each. There are a lot of unusual interactions. Some cards can become significantly better or worse with black market, and you just sort of, as long as you remember those rules peculiarities about like cards don't have piles that they come from and more non-supply cards and all that stuff, like you should be good. Like you just got to sit there and work it out though every time you look at a card. Like ratings wise, black market is like a top 20% card, so it's really high up there. It's very good. It's not the most powerful thing around, but it is generally on the very strong side. It's very good. Oh god. So yeah, that's kind of it for black market. Just if there's an engine, use it as payload, build, get really good decks. What we're going to do now is we're going to head over to the online client, dominion.games, and we're going to take a look at some random kingdoms, and we're going to assess if black market is any good. Now, something a little bit different this time. In true black market spirit, this is really full random with every single expansion turned on at once. So we're going to get some pretty wacky kingdoms here. So let's see. We'll try not to spend too long looking at these because they can be pretty complicated. We have another promo here with Sauna Avanto. So what's the engine look like? So there is trashing with Sauna. There is draw with patrol and advisor and lackeys. There's a village with border village and lackeys to some extent. There's also ride for more draw. There's plus buy with wine merchant. There's an attack with COVID. There's a really, really good engine here. Yeah, you can draw up pretty well. And so black market is going to be incredible here, right? Like, you might be on the lookout for some cheaper villages, but Sauna Avanto, ironically, probably not going to be very good because it's going to be really hard to pair them up, possibly. Like, it'll still be fine, but it's the trashing from Sauna that you care about, and you probably want to get a little bit under control first. So how are we going to build this? I might actually open black market just out of, what else am I going to buy early on? And my first four, so like maybe my opening is Lackey's black market, right? Unless I have a 5-2, in which case, I don't know, do I want to get a patrol and get towards border villages soon? Maybe I'll just go for black market slightly earlier. I get one and I open with it, because I don't think I need the others straight away. Like, the other fours are not so exciting. If I'm opening with black market, I don't have a silver for trashing with Sauna, but to be honest, I would rather build up and draw a bunch before I start trying to trash down with Sauna. I might even find a better trasher straight away in the black market. So this is a very good black market board. There is a lot of room for this engine to do very well, right? There's clearly signs that there's a bit of an engine here with draw, trashing. The trashing, you might not get it up to speed straight away, but the problem is that the payload is like Wine Merchant, Messenger, and Coven, which are not great on their own. So black market will escalate that to the stratosphere. Like, you can't beat black market here. It's going to absolutely go crazy and destroy you if you don't go for it. So this is a very, very good black market board. This is sort of ideal in black market, basically turning what is an okay engine into a ridiculous one. It is the key card on this board. Very, very powerful here. So let's look at the next one. So we have tax, it's worth noting here. Now we have Kiln, not so great with black market. There's a lot of Kingdom cards because there's Young Witch has added one. So we have Sacrifice to Trash. We have Archive for draw, and to some extent Young Witch. It's not really draw, is it? We have City as a village and Native Village. So we've got 2 village piles, so that's really good for black market. Falconer, what can Falconer gain? Villages, Native Villages, Young Witches, it's okay here. Falconers are great. Capital, is it good? You don't really like being in debt, so I think Capital is quite bad, unless you pick up a synergy with Capital, but yeah. Archive is bad draw, I guess. It's only okay. So again, we've got a situation where the engine has the components that we need. We haven't got plus buy with Candlestick Maker. The problem is that we need Payload, and so Black Market can give us that. We've got Tax, we've got Citadel as projects. So Citadel, very good, as a free throne at the start of your turn. So we can use that to get loads of villages by playing a village, and you've got 4 actions at the start of your turn. So again, this is a very good Black Market board. The trashing is bad, is the only thing. We have got some trashing with Sacrifice, but do we even bother with Sacrifice? I do want to trash because there's Young Witch. The thing is, you've got Young Witch and Tunnel, and I wonder, well, you can't open Young Witch Tunnel necessarily because there's Tax on the board, which actually really hurts its ability. Oh, and there's Colony Platinum as well. So yeah, so actually going for a tunnel Young Witch discard thing, because there's Colony Platinum, it's not even that good, right? And you can't open with those cards. So you're not going for the basic boring strategy thanks to Tax. So the engine has a long time to build here and gets to do really well. So Black Market is going to be very, very important in making that very good. And we're going to be grabbing stuff. I do actually want better trashing from Black Market, but what I really want is good draw, actually, especially with one of my villages being Native Village, which is not so great. One nice thing about Native Village is because it's so cheap, the Black Market gets to, get more likely to have 2 money left over in my buy phase to buy it. Oh, I guess it's worth noting, I didn't mention it before, you can't spend coffers when you want to buy from the Black Market because it's not your buy phase. So I mentioned debt, but I didn't mention coffers. So yeah, so again, really good Black Market. Black Market is key to making this deck work. This deck will eventually become bananas, and thanks to stuff like Colony Platinum, it's going to get very good. What card was the Bane? Sorry, let me see. It is Native Village. Okay, so Young Witch is actually going to be pretty bad. It's going to miss a lot because you're probably going to have a bunch of Native Villages in this deck. So, okay, yeah. So, another really good Black Market deck there. Doing what it does best, which is being the payload that you need for an engine to really help it out. Here we have, so we've got Gamble and Sewers as our landmarks. We've got Wharf for draw, so that's very good. We've got Counterfeit to trash, that's very good. We've got Experiment to draw as well, and there's Artificer. We have Farming Village as a village, so we got Village Wharf combo, so we got a strong engine already. There's Cut Purse, but I don't really care that much. Sewers, well, Counterfeit, so yeah, we're going to trash. Ill-Gotten Gains isn't going to be very good. There is Distant Lands to allow us as an alternate scoring method to help us build the engine. What's Artificer going to get? Probably not much. Experiments? It's okay here. If we get cost reduction, Artificer's going to be very good, which we might find in the Black Market. So because we have Wharf for draw and we got a village pile, and our trashing is non-terminal, it's, there's actually not very many terminals we want other than Wharf, Black Market, Distant Lands in the Kingdom. So we've probably got plenty of villages. So this again is looking like a very good Black Market deck. We can draw. We have spare villages available. We've got our trashing, it's all sorted already. We haven't got plus buy with Counterfeit. So we've got the core engine stuff going, but it's not good enough for Payload, right? So what we need is, I just noticed you can't trash curses. Oh yes, you can trash curses with the Counterfeit because you've got Sewers. So I'm not worried about an opponent doing a money strategy like ill-gotten gains. If black market wasn't available, then maybe something like that might be okay, but it's got no chance because black market, incredibly good engine payload. Again, just like the other two kingdoms, this is a very, very good black market board because you need the payload. You need something to do with your village wharf, and so black market's going to give you that. Right, kingdom number 4. So we have Stockpile and Magpie. Way of the Goat as well for our trashing. Yeah. Where is our village? So there is only Crown to start with. So it's a little bit spooky, but we might have a bunch of magpies maybe. There's other non-terminals like Oasis, Lurker. That's also not so great. Now, there is Outpost, which is already pretty good engine payload. There is Patrol for draw. There's Messenger for plus buy. There's Raider as an attack, but whatever, who cares? It's Raider. So the thing is that villages are kind of tough. It's nice that we've got Crown as a throne room. That's actually pretty good for black market, but the one critical thing that we want more than anything else, villages, they are kind of a bit awkward here. The other thing that scares me is that there is Stockpile and there is Magpie. And the Magpies can draw you the crowns as well, which is nice for an engine, but Stockpile, Magpie, Patrol, there's actually really good for the money player here. Just Stockpile is so fast. But on the other hand, Stockpile will let a black market player afford expensive good cards in the black market pretty quick. Wait, where's the trashing? Oh, Way of the Goat, of course. Yeah. So, yeah, I think this is still in black market's favour. I think that, what am I talking about? I'm looking at Magpie and Stockpile thinking, is there a fast money strategy? But man, there's an engine as well, right? And it's got Crown in it, so it has to be good for black market. So this has got to be the engine, right? And black market, again, there isn't other great payload. Stockpile will eventually run out. What do you do for payload? Well, there's black market. So this is just like the other three. Man, every kingdom's the same. Right, does black market do that? Do all of these kingdoms just come out the same? Just another incredible black market kingdom. Come on, let's give me one that's not great. Maybe they will always be good because it's black market. Now here's one where black market might not do so well. So first of all, there is no village at all. We've got incredible payload with Goons and Bridge Troll and Haggler on the kingdom. Replace Cavalry. Oof. But there's no village. That's a huge problem because there is Keep as well, which is also in black market's favour. Oh, and there's Fairgrounds as well, which is in black market's favour. Okay, this is really interesting. So we've got unbelievable payload with Bridge Troll, Goons, and I guess black market, but with no village, unless you go to the black market to hunt down villages, right? In which case, then you can play multiple Goons or Bridge Trolls, but also you want to buy stuff from the black market. But because there's Keep and Fairgrounds, the black market deck is worth so many points, and someone who's not doing black market stuff, they can't get the points from Goons. There's also, what's the draw? There's only Cavalry, unless you get it from the black market as well. So I'm really on the lookout. Because there's Goons as a discard attack for people who are, trying to do. So I think, there's Colony Platinum as well. So this has to be black market. What wins out in the long term here? So what's down here? We start with Pouch as well. Okay. And that is because we have Tracker in the kingdom. Yes, of course, that starts with Pouch. So with Colony Platinum, building an engine feels really good. Black market is the only way we could possibly build an engine, but we're really missing a lot of key components. We have no draw, we have no villages, we have no trashing. We're sort of missing everything. And there's Goons. But is a Goons money strategy actually going to be good enough to get up to Colony? I don't think it gets to replace things. It doesn't get to buy golds. But with Fairgrounds and Keep, can the black market player actually keep up with a goonsing maybe a Goons player would only go up to provinces, right? They wouldn't bother with colony. They're sort of gambling on ending the game fast enough. But if a black market player gets good enough stuff, eventually they can just play Goons as well, and then the Goons player's in big trouble, right? So I think this has to be black market, but it's a really weird black market board. Because you are just desperately hoping for anything at all to build the engine and also gain an enormous number of points. Like someone who's just going Goons big money, they can't really do fairgroundsy stuff, while the black market player just gets enormously powerful fairgrounds, in addition to being able to go for colonies and stuff. Yeah, okay, I think it's clear. This is definitely a black market kingdom. It is super important. This is, again, even though there's like Goons and Cavalry and Bridge Troll and all these incredibly powerful cards in this kingdom, this has to be a black market kingdom. Like, oh, I did just notice there's transport to get Goons really quickly. Oh, that is interesting. You can play Goons on turn 3. And you can just keep buying Goons with transport, but then I guess you're not getting the points from playing the Goons. Well, that's curious, but I don't think it's good enough. So, okay, whatever. Yeah, so this is black market. So every single one of these 5 kingdoms was just very, very good for black market. 4 of them because there was a sort of a weaky engine with no other good payload. But this one, the problem is that the board is all payload and there's no engine. It's really funny. And so you need to hunt black market to actually get cards to do something, because there's just nothing else to do otherwise. And it sort of beats out all the other payload in the absence of not doing anything, because it allows you to make a deck that actually does stuff. And there are 2 alternate victory cards on the kingdom, as well as Colony Platinum to help make the game go long. So yeah, wild stuff. So there you go. Black Market is a very good card. Does a lot. So yeah. Anyway, that was something different this time, a promo card. Maybe we'll go back to regularly scheduled 1 expansion at a time stuff after this, but this was something different, and I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.